Welcome to the Remedify Coaching Program podcast. This is our deep dive, and it's really designed for you, the learner, who wants to get a handle on complex theological debates without, spending years in a library.
Exactly. We're not here to argue the theology. We're here to dissect the architecture of an argument.
And today we have some really fascinating source material. It's a highly structured debate script, basically a point-by-point breakdown of a very specific question.
A really high-stakes question. Is Muhammad a true prophet by Christian standards? So we're looking at how two major worldviews use their own sacred texts, the Bible on one side and the Qur'an and Islamic tradition on the other, to make their case.
Our mission today is purely methodological. Think of us as, systems analysts. We're going to unpack the tests that the Christian side of this debate lays out.
And then map the evidence they use. And the value in this, for you, is getting a shortcut to the core fault lines, the key points of tension.
Right. And what's so interesting about this source is how rigorous it is. It doesn't just jump into disagreements.
No, it establishes a framework first. It lays out 4 biblical criteria for what makes a true prophet, and then applies them methodically one by one. Understanding those rules of engagement is, it's half the battle.
Okay, so let's lay out that foundation for everyone. These are the 4 tests that, according to this script, a prophet must pass to be considered a true prophet from the God of the Bible. What's the first one?
The first, and maybe the most important, is continuity. The new message cannot fundamentally contradict what God has already revealed about himself and his plan.
It has to fit. It can't just, erase what came before.
Precisely. The second test is public verification. A truly divine message, it argues, needs to be verifiable by outside witnesses. It can't just be based on one person's private, unattested experience.
That makes sense. So it's not just take my word for it. Okay, what's third?
Third is moral authority. The prophet's own life and character have to reflect the divine message they bring. In fact, their position should put them under even greater scrutiny, not give them special passes.
And the fourth, which you said is kind of the ultimate filter?
Yes. Fidelity to the gospel, this is the New Testament layer. It says that any new revelation must be consistent with the core non-negotiable message about Jesus Christ, specifically his death and resurrection.
So that's the whole architecture. Continuity, public verification, moral authority, and fidelity to the gospel.
It's an incredibly high bar.
It is. Okay, before we dive into how these tests are applied in the script, we want to mention a couple of really important resources for you. First, we believe that deep theological training shouldn't be out of reach for anyone. So you can get free Bible College online right in your inbox. It's called Tyrannus Hall Bible College, or THBC. Just go to shop.beacons.ai/KK2020/Tyrannus Hall Bible College.
No need to travel hundreds of miles. All you need is your phone and an internet connection. You can start today, and please, tell your friends.
Also, if you're interested in supporting our outreach efforts, you can check out beacons.ai/KK2020/philanthropy. That supports our village outreach work. We'd really appreciate you looking into that.
Your support there is crucial. It helps us expand both what we do educationally and what we can do on the ground.
All right, let's get into the first section of this debate framework. It really focuses on those first 2 big tests, continuity and public verification.
And the script is so strategic here. It doesn't start with some minor detail. It goes straight for the theological jugular, the absolute core disagreement between the two faiths.
Which is the person of Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
So, round 1. The script calls this the crucifixion conflict. The first question posed is, does the Qur'an deny Jesus' crucifixion?
And the Christian debater in this script immediately points to a specific verse in the Qur'an, chapter 4, verse 157.
And what's the significance of that verse?
Well, it's pivotal. It talks about the claims of those who said, we killed Christ Jesus, but then the verse says, but they killed him not, nor crucified him, but so it was made to appear to them. The standard Islamic interpretation is a denial that Jesus physically died on the cross.
Okay, so a direct contradiction of the Christian account.
A direct and total contradiction. And that's where the script brings in the biblical counterpoint. The cross and resurrection aren't just, side stories in Christianity.
They're the whole point.
They are the entire point. The script cites 1 Corinthians 15, where the Apostle Paul says that Christ, dying for our sins, being buried and rising again, is the gospel. It's of first importance.
So the logic here is, if that's the core message from God, how can a later prophet from the same God come and say, actually, that central event never happened?
That's the crisis of continuity.
Yeah.
It's not just a historical debate. It's a question of whether God contradicts himself. And that's where the script uses that ultimate filter we mentioned, Galatians 1:8,
Which warns against a different gospel.
a different gospel.
Yeah.
It says, "Eat as an angel from heaven preaches another gospel, let him be accursed." The standard is absolute. If you deny the crucifixion, you are, by definition, preaching a different gospel.
So this first question is designed to be a potential single-point failure. If the claimant fails the continuity test right here on the gospel itself, everything else is secondary.
That's the strategy. It establishes the priority of the prior revelation.
Okay, that's round one. Let's move to round two, which shifts from the content of the message to how it was received. Public versus private revelation.
Right. And here the question is about Muhammad's first revelation. Was it a private experience? The script cites the well-known tradition from Bukhari about him being alone in the cave of Hira.
Which is the standard Islamic narrative. He was alone when he received the first command to recite.
And that private, isolated nature of the event immediately runs up against the biblical standard of public verification for major prophetic turning points.
But the script adds another layer here. It's not just that it was private. It highlights his reaction.
Yes, this is a critical detail. The tradition, again from Bukhari, says he came home terrified. He was afraid he'd been possessed by a jinn, a spirit, or demon. He needed reassurance from his wife Khadija and her cousin Warqa to believe the experience was divine.
And that initial fear is the point of tension. The counter-argument in the script asks, where in the Bible do you see one of God's true prophets reacting with that kind of terror, thinking they might be demonically possessed?
Right. Because biblical encounters, while definitely awe-inspiring, are usually marked by divine reassurance. Think of the angel telling Mary, "Do not be afraid." There's a sense of clarity and divine comfort. The script even cites to Timothy, which says, God gives a spirit of power and love, not of fear.
So the implication is that the biblical standard requires the revelation to be self-authenticating to the prophet. It shouldn't produce doubt and fear about its source.
Exactly. It creates this contrast. A revelation that produces divine assurance versus one that requires external human validation to confirm it wasn't demonic. And that, for this framework, challenges the standard.
That leads directly into round three then, the need for independent witnesses.
It tightens the screw on that public verification test. It's no longer just about the prophet's internal state, but about external proof.
And the challenge is very specific. It asks for the names of independent contemporary eyewitnesses who saw Muhammad receive revelation, and it specifies non-Muslims.
And this standard is pulled directly from the New Testament's own model for validating its biggest claim. The script again goes to 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul says, the resurrected Christ appeared to more than 500 people at once, most of whom were still alive and could be questioned.
So it's setting a precedent. If the resurrection was validated by hundreds of external witnesses, then a new revelation should meet a similar standard.
And the non-Muslim part is key. The testimony of believers, while important, isn't considered independent in this framework. For public proof, you need testimony from people who aren't already committed to the claim.
So if no such witnesses can be named,
then the question becomes, why does this revelation operate under a different, and according to the script, a lower standard of public verification than the one used for the gospel?
it really forces a discussion about how we know something is true. Is it based on public verifiable history, or is it based on accepting the private word of a messenger?
That's the core epistemological clash right there.
All right, let's shift gears. We're moving from the prophet and his experience to the revelation itself. Section 2 deals with the stability and consistency of the text.
Yes, this is where we get into some textual criticism and theological principles about whether the message itself reflects an unchanging God.
Round 4 starts with a very technical point: textual authority and the burning of variants. The script asks if Islam acknowledges multiple early readings of the Qur'an, known as the 7 Aruf.
And this is an established concept in Islamic tradition. The Aruf were different, but all considered valid modes of recitation in the early days. They existed, creating a certain diversity in the text.
Okay, so if that's affirmed, the script then brings up a historical event: the actions of the third caliph, Uthman.
Right. Uthman, seeing that these different readings were causing confusion and division in the growing empire, decided to standardize the text. He created one official version and then, critically, ordered all other variant copies to be burned. This is recorded in Bukhari.
So for you, the learner, the core question this raises is enforced uniformity by a political leader the same thing as original textual purity guaranteed by God?
That's the tension. The biblical standard being implied is that God divinely preserves his word. The action of Uthman suggests that the Qur'an's final form was preserved through human political intervention. It required a human to step in and burn the other versions to maintain unity.
It puts the authority in a different place, doesn't it? Is the authority in the original diverse revelations or in the later standardized version enforced by a caliph?
And that's the challenge. Was the text preserved by divine miracle or by human power? This framework argues the latter fails the test of divine textual stability.
Okay, that critique of consistency continues right into round 5 with the doctrine of abrogation.
Yes, or naskh in Arabic.
Mhm.
The question is whether the Quran teaches that later verses can cancel out or abrogate earlier ones. And the Quran itself mentions this in a few places.
And this concept is used to explain seemingly contradictory verses, right? Things revealed at different times.
Exactly. It's a key principle in Islamic law. But for the Christian framework in this debate, it poses a huge problem for the idea of God's unchanging nature. The challenge is, show us a place in the Bible where God cancels his own moral law.
Not ceremonial law, but core moral law.
Right. And this is where the script makes a really key distinction between fulfillment and cancellation. Jesus in Matthew 5 says he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Fulfillment is bringing it to its ultimate meaning, not just getting rid of it.
Whereas cancellation implies God changed his mind.
It implies a revision of a divine command. And if you believe God is unchanging, as a verse like Numbers 23.19 suggests, then the idea that he needs to cancel his own moral laws is a major hurdle. It suggests a divine character that's subject to change.
Which is seen as incompatible with the God of the Bible. Okay, this is getting deep. Let's look at round 6. Satanic interference with prophecy.
This is one of the most sensitive topics in the whole analysis. The script starts by citing a verse from the Qur'an itself, chapter 22, verse 52, which acknowledges that Satan can cast things into a prophet's recitation.
So the Quran itself opens the door to this possibility.
It does. It says God then abrogates or perfects what Satan has cast. But the script pairs this verse with a historical report from the early biographies of Muhammad, the Sirah.
The incident that's often called the Satanic verses.
Right, where, according to these early historical sources, Muhammad briefly recited verses that praised pagan goddesses, thinking it was revelation, and then later retracted them, saying they were from Satan.
And the test here is just devastatingly simple. Can a true prophet of God mistake Satan's words for God's words? Even for a moment.
Exactly. The biblical standard implies a kind of divine protection over the prophet, and infallibility in the transmission of the message. The idea that the channel could be briefly hijacked by an enemy entity creates a massive crisis of authority.
It suggests a vulnerability that just doesn't fit the biblical model of a prophet.
Right. It questions the prophet's supernatural discernment. If you can't tell the difference between God and Satan, how can anyone trust the message?
Okay, let's pause here because this section has been incredibly complex. We've gone from textual variants to the very consistency of God's character. Before we move on, let's quickly remind you of those resources. We really want you to have the tools to dig deeper into this stuff. So remember, you can get free Bible College online right in your inbox. It's Tyrannus Hall Bible College. Just visit shop.beacons.ai/KK2020/Tyrannus Hall Bible College.
Seriously, no need to travel. All you need is your phone and an internet connection. It's an amazing resource, so please start today and tell your friends.
And also, please check out the link, beacons.ai/KK2020/philanthropy.
Yeah.
That's to support our village outreach efforts, and we really appreciate any support you can give there.
We do. It helps us keep doing what we're doing and expanding it.
All right, let's pivot now to the next section. We're looking at those last two biblical criteria, moral authority and the nature of the kingdom being established.
This is where the focus shifts to the prophet's personal conduct and the kind of society his revelation was building.
Round 7 kicks this off by asking about moral authority and personal privilege. The question is whether the Qur'an grants Muhammad special marital privileges by revelation.
And it cites a specific verse, Qur'an 33.50 which is one of several verses that outlines rules about marriage that applied only to Muhammad and not to other Muslim men.
And the script brings up a specific example to illustrate this, doesn't it?
It does. It cites a hadith from Bukhari regarding the age of his wife Aisha at the time of their marriage. But the point here, for the debate framework, isn't just the historical detail itself, but the source of the authority for it.
Meaning the revelation itself is giving the permission.
Exactly. And the comparative prompt is the core of the challenge. Do biblical prophets get revelations that indulge their personal desires or give them special exemptions from the moral law?
And the script argues no. It brings up the prophet Nathan confronting King David.
A perfect counterexample. The revelation Nathan brought was a hard judgment on David for his sin. Prophecy in the Bible often brings correction and accountability, not personal privilege. The higher you are, the harder you fall.
So it's a fundamental reversal of the role of a prophet. Is prophecy meant to hold power accountable, or is it meant to sanction the personal life of the powerful?
That's the test. And in this framework, using revelation to grant personal exemptions is seen as a failure of moral authority.
Okay, let's look at round 8, the use of coercion. This is about the methodology of spreading the faith.
Yes, a crucial part of the kingdom test. The script asks about Quranic commands to fight unbelievers, citing verses from chapter 9, like the sword verse.
These verses are understood to provide a mandate for military expansion under specific historical and legal conditions.
Right. And the Christian framework in the script creates a stark contrast by immediately going to the words of Jesus. In John 18, Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight."
And he tells Peter in the garden to put away his sword.
Exactly. So what you have here is a comparison of two completely different kingdom models. One is advanced through peaceful witness, persuasion, and even suffering. The other, at least under certain conditions, involves the use of military and political force.
So for the New Testament standard, any use of coercion or violence to spread the faith is a failure of the test. It's fundamentally at odds with the methodology of Jesus.
It's seen as antithetical to the nature of the kingdom that Christ came to establish, which is built on self-sacrifice, not conquest.
That's a very clear distinction. All right, round 9. This one is about predictive prophecy.
This is another one of those external validation standards. The challenge posed is for the Muslim side to name a long-range, specific prophecy that Muhammad made that was later fulfilled independently.
And this standard comes from the Old Testament, right? Where God proves he is God by declaring the end from the beginning.
Yes, it's a key theme in a book like Isaiah. True prophecy isn't just good advice. It's a demonstration of divine supernatural knowledge of the future. And the script emphasizes long-range prophecy.
Why is that distinction so important?
Because short-term predictions about, say, a local battle could be chalked up to good political strategy or just a lucky guess. The standard demands predictions about things far outside the prophet's immediate context, things only an all-knowing God could know.
So if no such prophecy can be provided,
then the claim is considered unverified by this biblical standard. The mechanism for divine proof, which is so central to prophets like Isaiah or Daniel, is seen as missing.
it's arguing that true prophecy has to provide its own supernatural credentials in a way.
That's a good way to put it. It has to prove its divine source through a demonstration of divine power.
Okay, we've gone through 9 rounds of these systematic tests, and now we come to round 10, which the script calls the decisive test.
And this really brings everything full circle. It links right back to round 1 and shows that the entire Christian framework hinges on one thing: the person and work of Jesus Christ.
So the final question is a simple yes or no. Does the claimant affirm that Jesus is God's son and was crucified for our sins?
And as we've established, the Qur'an denies both of those things. It denies the divine sonship of Jesus, and it denies the physical crucifixion.
So the conclusion within this framework is immediate and absolute.
It is. Denying those things is, by definition, denying the gospel. And if you deny the gospel, you fail the ultimate test of fidelity. It disqualifies the claimant entirely, regardless of any other points. It's the final, non-negotiable filter.
The script then does something really smart. It anticipates the rebuttals.
It does. It lays out a rapid-fire summary. The Christian closer emphasizes that their faith is built on public history, the cross, the empty tomb. A prophet who denies that public attested history fails the test.
And the most common counter-argument to that is what?
That the Bible has been corrupted. The text we have now isn't the original, so its account of the cross can't be trusted.
But the script has a counter for that too, and it's a very specific strategy.
It is. It uses the Qur'an against the corruption claim. The debater is instructed to point to verses in the Qur'an, like in chapter 5, that actually speak of the gospel, the Injil, as being authoritative and present during Muhammad's time.
So it creates a logical trap.
Exactly. The argument is you can't have it both ways. You can't say the Qur'an affirms the authority of the gospel that existed in the 7th century while also claiming that gospel was already corrupted. Because the one thing we know for sure about the 7th century gospel is that its core message was the cross and resurrection of Christ.
So affirming the book's authority means you have to deal with its content?
Right. And denying its content undermines the Qur'an's own validation of it. It's a very powerful argument about internal consistency.
Wow. Okay, so to make sure everyone walks away with this clearly, let's do that quick one-card summary of the key points of failure according to this framework.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
First, on continuity, the big one. Denying the cross, which violates the different gospel warning in Galatians.
On witnesses, the private cave experience versus the public resurrection event witnessed by hundreds.
On the text, the burning of variant texts by a human ruler versus the idea of perfect divine preservation.
On morality, the idea of getting personal privileges by revelation, which is the opposite of biblical prophecy that holds leaders accountable.
And finally, on kingdom methodology, using the sword to advance the faith versus Jesus' command to spread the truth through peaceful witness.
When you lay it all out like that, you can really see that the fundamental difference isn't just about different facts, it's about totally different methods of proof.
That's the real takeaway. Is truth validated by public, historical, verifiable events? Or is it validated by the private, authoritative word of a messenger which supersedes what came before?
And that's really the provocative thought we want to leave you with today. When you evaluate any truth claim from any source, what are your standards? What method of proof do you require?
It's a question everyone has to wrestle with.
We really hope this deep dive into this very specific framework has given you the kind of structural knowledge you were looking for. Understanding the criteria, how the arguments are actually built is so key to being well-informed.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack this. It's a complex topic, but seeing the rigorous application of these standards is, I think, incredibly insightful.
And please don't let your learning stop here. Remember, you can get free Bible College online right in your inbox. It's Tyrannus Hall Bible College. Just visit shop.beacons.ai/KK2020/Tyrannus Hall Bible College.
No travel, no tuition. All you need is your phone. Start today and tell your friends about this amazing resource.
And please also remember to check out the link beacons.ai/KK2020/philanthropy to support our village outreach efforts. It helps expand everything we do.
Your support means the world.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.